This is the Roller Coaster Podcast, and I'm your host, Lucy Q. Life is a wild ride. It has twists and turns. It's scary, exciting, and downright fun. So throw your head back, arms in the air, and come along with me for the ride.
Life is like a roller coaster, baby, baby. I wanna ride.
Today's guest, Madonna Hanna, was a pioneering woman in the segregated East Coast fashion industry during the 70s. She never let discrimination and flagrant bigotry hold her back. From the runways to an executive in fashion, Madonna continued to create success. She then began a 32-year teaching career, and even in retirement, she continues to inspire others. Madonna is proof that anything is possible. Welcome, Madonna.
Well, thank you so much for having me here. This is the first time I've traveled to Nova Scotia.
Nova Scotia. There's a certain way that people here say it. I wasn't born here. I moved here in 2007. But yeah, it's a great place. It's a great place. So your life began with a lot of struggle and challenges, but somehow, regardless of what was presented, you always persevered and continued to find success. What are some of those critical lessons that you learned from going from that victim to victor state?
Thank you so much for asking, Lucy. And I am happy to share with your listeners that even though I was raised in a conservative white town outside of Boston, and it was real easy to always pick me out, the lessons that I learned from being teased and bullied was to have a thick skin. I eventually realized that there was nothing that I could do about the color of my skin, and people just had to deal with it. And I knew that I wanted to either go into the theater or the fashion industry. And Boston, for those of you who are familiar with the city of Boston, just had all these major department stores. And even as a child going into the stores, I was very aware of the displays, interior and the window displays, how the clothing was merchandised. And I would practice selling the merchandise in my closet.
That's awesome.
If you can picture me as a 5-year-old child taking inventory of my parents' garments, feeling the fabric, touching the purses, the shoes, my father's fedora hat. My mother never mentioned that whenever she went into the pantry, that the canned goods were color coordinated and the potatoes were all sized in order. Little did I know that this was going to become part of my life. And I also designed clothing for paper dolls. If the instructions were color the top yellow and the shorts green, no, I did what I wanted to do. And plus, I would practice selling anything that I could put my hands on to my stuffed animals and dolls. It was all,
just in you.
It was already in me. I did go to a private 2-year retailing school, did very well there. At the graduation, I gave a speech, and one of the stores that had decided not to hire me, when the recruiters come through in the spring, the vice president in charge of personnel for the region, this was Jordan Mosh back then, Jordan Mosh, asked the director of my school, and just where is she going? What I found out at the time was that the local stores were looking for, shopping for, I was colored at the time, colored. They were looking for female colored executives. Every once in a while, the NAACP would, a Black organization for people who don't know, would get upset with the local department stores and say, we don't see enough Black floor managers. And once that hits the paper, then of course everybody gets all panicked and let's go find some Black females that we can put on our executive training program. My darling, I came in from the top. He called me, said, we'd love to have you on our executive training program. And I found out about the NAACP stuff, later. And I said, of course, because I wanted to work at either that store or another store downtown. Lucy, what I did not know, but was told later, that there's an unwritten rule about Black employees in the downtown Boston stores. Most of the major stores were built at the turn of the century. And Jordan Marsh was one of those stores. They also had a new, shiny, pretty annex. When I first started working as a floor executive, I was in the old part of the store. I was happy to be there. I'm in the executive training program. I'm in charge of people. I believe I was in the housewares for a while. One morning, 2 African-American ladies, assistant buyers, took me aside because you see, they'd been watching me. They took me aside and they said, we're going to tell you the unwritten rules. You will never become a buyer because you're Black. We've been assistant buyers for 5 years. We know we're not going anywhere. Plus, this is the old part of the store. There aren't any Black executives in the new part of the store. So you're going to be over here for a while and don't even think about being a buyer, which was one thing that I wanted to do. And I thanked them for their advice. I got to be in the new part of the store. Just one day I was told, oh, you're going to be in the children's division in the new part of the store. The prejudice. It was not all the customers, but I'm going to tell a couple of quick stories. I was managing the young junior department. A white female customer approached my salesperson, had a situation that a manager had to handle. My sales lady, who was probably 40, 50 years old, brought her over to me. The customer looked at me up and down and looked back at the saleswoman and said, I want a real manager.
What year was this?
This was
About
70. I'm going to say 74. The sales lady was confused, but I wasn't. All that stuff that I went through, so like I said, you grow a thick skin. I knew what she meant. And this is how I handled it. I said, okay. I called an assistant manager from the hardware department. She's white. There's a customer here who'd like to speak with you. Oh, okay. Yeah. Here she comes from the hardware department. The customer brightens up and she explains her problem. to this young lady who says, ma'am, I would really like to be able to help you, but I don't know anything about the merchandise in this department. It's Miss Beauclair's department. And the customer was just, and off, off she went. And don't you know, that manager looked at the customer looked at me and then walked away. She just did not want me to solve the situation that she had with the merchandise from my department. And as she was leaving, I said, thank you very much for coming into Jordan Marsh. Hopefully we can help you another day.
Oh, okay. I have to say, good on you for having that level of self-control, because I probably would have lost my nut. That's just who I am. But good on you for finding the grace to handle the situation the way that you did. But going back, you mentioned earlier that you just kind of got into the annex. That they said that you wouldn't get there, but you just kind of arrived there. One day they said you're going to work in the annex. Do you think that was because you believed that you could get there? That nothing was going to stop you, and so it just kind of opened things up because management didn't see a problem?
Well, I didn't know that there was a situation. I was happy to be part of an executive retail program, one of the best in the country. I had no idea that there was that unwritten rule until these ladies told me about it. I didn't think any more about it because I was happy to be working as a retail executive at one of the largest department stores in New England.
So you didn't, you weren't carrying any frustration or anger with the situation.
No.
And inadvertently, you got it, you got out of your own way so that they did see what you were capable of. I mean, it's unfair that anybody would be put in that situation, but because you didn't see what other people saw, it just positioned you differently.
I think so, because I knew that because of the color of my skin, that I had to make sure I did everything right and followed all of the rules, because I didn't want to be fired, because I didn't want anyone to be able to say, well, you see, we hired this colored girl and it didn't work out. We gave her an opportunity and it didn't work out. I don't know what transpired to move me to the new shiny pretty part of the store. I don't know. I didn't ask for it because you just I didn't ask for it.
Did you see it for yourself? Like, could you see yourself working there?
Well, sure, of course. But once again, I was just grateful to be in the store. And there were opportunities sometimes to help out in the fashion division, where they put on the fashion shows, and every single female up there had blonde hair, blue eyes, and they were just as cute as they could be. I knew that I would not be able to work in the fashion division because of the color of my skin. And that was another unwritten rule. But there were opportunities to place masking tape on the bottom of shoes that were going to be worn in the fashion show. And I gladly did it because I was, I didn't care. Here I am in the fashion department for an hour taping the bottoms of shoes, expensive shoes. Thought I died and gone to heaven. I did. But I just looked at it as just, wow, this is an opportunity. I know I'm never going to be able to work here because I don't have the looks, but just to have that brief opportunity to work in the fashion division. Another incident that happened in my department, the buyer was an absolutely horrible, terrible woman. She would always scream and yell at people. It would be like she would fly in on her broom and just rip salespeople apart, the younger ones, not the older ones. But if there was somebody younger, like, why? And when I was placed into the department, I had two choices to make: do the paperwork that the other manager left, or learn the merchandise. I decided to do the paperwork because it wasn't going to take me that long to learn my merchandise. She flew in on her broom one day, and as she did so, a customer asked me where something was. Where are the Bobby Brooks shirts? And I'm like, oh, the sales lady will help you find that. Well, the buyer knew what I was doing, and she yells, they gave me a sales manager who doesn't know my merchandise? I mean, and she's yelling this, so everyone. Long story short, she did not like me as her manager because of the color of my skin. One day as she was coming to visit the department, customers picked up a blouse, didn't put it back on the rack, on the clothes hanger correctly, and it slipped off and fell on the floor. She saw that. I saw her see it. I was on my way to pick it up. She starts yelling at me. What is my $23 Shipley blouse doing on the floor? And she just went off, and that was it, Lucy. I just said, this is it. Either I need to be transferred to another department, or I'm going to quit today. Because she started calling me names. She called me the N word, and then she added the B word with it. She went off. She said, I have no idea why the management brought this colored girl in here. And then she's in my department. She traveled from the 4th floor down the escalator with this rant all the way across the street to the buying office. And I went over to my manager and I said, either you move me to another department or I quit. And, you know, and she's scrambling like, okay, like what happened? You know, and then news travels fast because this is juicy stuff. Because when the buyer went ranting across the street, all the other buyers and assistant buyers are like, shoot, what happened? You know, and then people come out of the woodwork. They started calling me, Madonna, what the heck's going on? Nancy came over here ranting and raving. And then buyers that I had worked with before called me and said, listen, Madonna, you know, I don't have a problem with you. If you want to come back to children's, you know, 7 to 14, you can come up here, you know, hey, you know, so, so here are people being nosy, and then the buyers are positioning themselves like, hey, if she doesn't want you, come back up, come back up here. The upper management had a little bit of a problem because they had one of their top executives ranting, raving, calling me names. That's a huge lawsuit. And it wasn't like, you know, it wasn't like there weren't witnesses.
Yeah. Yeah. There's nothing around.
Yeah. So they had to clean things up. And how it was resolved. The buyer, they kept me in that department, but the buyer could not visit the department without getting my permission first.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That was a sting to her.
Yeah. I mean, she was bringing in the 4th largest volume of money in the New England region. And that didn't sit well with her, but it was what had to be, how it
Yeah.
was management said. Because of her behavior, they didn't want anything in the newspaper. And like I said, that's a huge lawsuit. To cut to the chase, she and I became friends.
Imagine
And
that.
And when I decided to leave the store, she came to me and said, "Did I do anything?" She said, "Did I do anything to make you want to leave?" And I thought, "Oh my gosh, what a 360. What a 360." But this was a situation where it was, oh my gosh. But then, once management stepped in and the power balance shifted, I didn't take advantage of it. I did not demean her. I was always cordial to her when she would call and say, "May I come and visit?"
Oh.
And I'd say, "Oh, hi, how are you today?" "Oh, certainly, everything's going to be ready when you arrive." And everything was. And she, and I remember her saying to me one day that she told upper management that I was doing a really good job. And she said, "Did they tell you that?" And I said, "No." She goes, "Oh, sure." "Oh, fine." They didn't tell you that. And so we both laughed about it. I said, "Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm glad that we're able to work together. And I'm going to make sure that your department is looking good, and we're going to be making money." But yes.
So how did, those early years working, how has that influenced how you're helping people today?
As a fashion marketing teacher, I'm retired now and had no idea I was going to go into teaching until my husband and I moved to Washington State, and there was an opportunity for a fashion marketing teacher. I knew that I was going to run my classroom the way the executive retail programs were run, and that since I was bullied, nobody was going to get bullied in my class. No one was going to get bullied. And all the students were going to be given the expectations that civility counts. I would write civility counts on the wall, on the whiteboard, and also give the definition of what civility is, being courteous. And what does that look like? Saying please, thank you, you're welcome. And I would tell my students, I don't care who you don't like, because when you go out in the working world, you're going to be lucky to like the people you work with, because most of the time you are going to have to tolerate and make adjustments to get along. And everyone has their own talents, abilities. Everyone is to be respected. And that's how it's going to be in this classroom. And if anybody was bullied, boom, I was right on it. And if a student said to me, "Oh, I was just joking," I'd say, "No, you weren't. You meant to say what you said. You meant it. I was bullied. I know what it looks like. I know what it feels like. It's not happening in here." Once the students realized that I was serious, the classroom became such a pleasant place to be. And students would sometimes tell me that they would love coming to my class because it was calm and they felt safe, because no one was going to attack them or be mean, because if they did, they'd have to deal with me. And while I was teaching, I created several anti-bullying projects for my students to be involved in. One was a project where we assisted students with special needs to be in fashion shows, to give them their moment on the stage. And that turned out to be such a wonderful project, because if anyone teased any of the students with special needs, my students were like, that's not happening. They stood up for them. I was lucky enough to receive actually a letter of acknowledgement from Hillary Clinton.
Ooh.
Yes, she very kindly wrote an acknowledgement to put in the program. It takes a village to, be a part and to help students with all abilities. They're all working together. Another project that I created was Beautiful Differences. We all have beautiful differences. Mine is my skin color. Another one might be if a child is teased because they have big feet. It's like, what can you say if you're teased because you have big feet? My answer is to say, that's right, I do have nice sized feet, because I'm going to leave impressions that are bold and people are going to follow. And to me, that was a much better answer than, well, everybody on your father's side has big feet, because that doesn't help to answer questions for the child. So no matter what your situation is, there's a positive to it. So if somebody teases you, you've got big ears. That's right. That's so that I can hear, lots of stuff that everybody else can't hear, and I'll be able to help more people that way. You just put that spin on it. I was fortunate enough to receive a number of grants. I am a Milken educator. The Milken Family Foundation each year awards a certain number of teachers $25,000 to do whatever they want with, and there's a nice trophy and other things that go along with that. And so I was able to receive a grant to write a play called Beautiful Differences. It was based on my children's book, Mommy, Why Are My Eyes So Big? And the fashion show that we did with the kids with disabilities. And my students would perform the play. I would read the book, and then we would ask the elementary school children in the school district, what's your beautiful difference? Which would mean, like, what is it that people pick on you about? What's different about you? And the children started writing down things like, well, I have a big mole on my face, and now that's my beautiful difference. Or I've got curly hair. I'm the tallest. I'm the shortest. One young man, he had Tourette's syndrome, and my students didn't know what it was. And they came to me and they said, Miss Hanna, this is Justin. He has Tourette's syndrome. Have you ever heard of that? And when I looked at Justin, he was just happy. All these high school girls are just all around him, paying attention to him. And I lied. I said, no, I don't know what it is. His little face brightened up and he explained to us what it was. That he had a nervous disorder, and sometimes, he couldn't control this or that. And sometimes he would swear and say things he shouldn't say. And here he was holding court with about 15, 20 beautiful high school girls. He became the envy of the class. So that by the time we left, he was the man. And sometimes I think back to that situation, that must have been the best day of Justin's life, to have all these beautiful high school girls like, really? Oh, gee, can we have our picture taken with you? Like, oh, shoot, sure. And, having Tourette's isn't as bad as I thought. And what a wonderful way to be able to leave a classroom and to just be able to give that to a child, that no matter what you look like, because growing up, and I'm the only Black kid in class, when you're teased, you think, oh gosh, this is the worst thing in the world, and you're not thinking that people can be teased because they have freckles.
Oh yeah, and that's the thing. Kids are evil, and they will tease you for anything. It doesn't make a difference what your color is, what
Nope.
color hair, if your freckles, how tall you are, how short you are, how big you are, how small you are. They will find a reason.
It absolutely, but at the time you're being teased, you don't know that. You see,
God, no.
I didn't know that. I thought that overnight, if I turned white, that life would be better for me. because as a child, it's like, oh, why me? Why did I have to be this color? But as I grew up and became more experienced, had more experiences, and I realized it doesn't matter. You could be drop dead gorgeous, and there's some jealous girls, who, well, she's ugly and we don't like her. And then the next thing you know, you're on the hit list, where people aren't going to talk to you. And it absolutely doesn't matter. And I always like to tell children of all ages that it does not matter what you look like. It matters what you have inside. I know that right now it's hard because the bullying seems like it's going to last forever and ever, but it doesn't. Just know that you are special. You've got some wonderful things about you. You've got talents and skills that you need to pursue. And it's going to be hard to block out what people say, but that's what you're going to have the strength to do. I am proof of that. I'm the kid that sat at the table by myself. I'm the kid that when I sat next to somebody, they scooted their chair away. When we had our dancing unit in gym class, I don't even think they have a dancing unit anymore, where you learn how to square dance and do the minuet, or maybe that was just a Boston thing.
No, we did it. I remember doing it.
Okay, yeah. and then the little,
it was bad. Yeah, I can't dance. No, it's not good.
Yes, all that. There were, we're square dancing, and then there's a little white boy who, after you do or whatever, change partners. Oh, I'm not touching her hand, and then everything comes to a screeching halt, and I'm standing there like, oh God, and I said, I'm not touching her hand, and yeah, that was me. That was me going over to a friend's house and having her mother take her aside, and then having that child come out and say, Madonna, you have to go home.
I can't.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine.
Yeah.
That's awful. But Madonna, you have so many great lessons to share. What is the best way for people to connect with you?
They can connect with me. They can go to my website, which is dropkickthedrama.com. They want a copy of my children's book, they can email me at mad, M-A-D, fashion, F-A-S-H-I-O-N, 2001 at yahoo.com. They can follow me on Instagram at Madonna, Fit, Fast, and Fabulous.
Ooh.
That track stuff that we didn't get to. And Facebook, Madonna, B as in boy, Hanna, Hanna.
Well, if you're listening and you are looking at connecting with Madonna, make sure you check out the show notes. I'm going to have all of her links in there. And Madonna, thank you so much for joining me and sharing your story today.
Glad I could do it. Glad I could do it. You go out there and you enjoy the weather in Nova Scotia. And it was a pleasure to meet you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Roller Coaster Podcast. Want to chat or share your ideas about today's show? Pop me an email at hello@therollercoasterpodcast.com. Don't forget to connect with me on Facebook and Instagram at The Roller Coaster Podcast. Our theme song, Roller Coaster, was performed by The Lucky Setback. Audio editing by the one and only Jeff Quigley of Quigley Creator.
Life is like a roller coaster, baby, baby. I wanna ride, 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 ride. Life is like a roller coaster, baby, baby. I wanna ride, 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 ride. Roller coaster. Ride, ride. Roller coaster.